Have you ever wondered what it would take to get you to sail off the edge of the known world? I mean, really think about it. Why would anyone climb onto a tiny wooden ship and point it towards an ocean they were pretty sure was filled with monsters? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into. Because that one question is at the very heart of the age of exploration.
Just try to put yourself in their shoes. You're setting out across a vast, terrifying ocean, and your best maps might show things like this. Yeah, that's a giant sea serpent. And this wasn't just some fantasy novel. Take a look at this actual map from 1539. This is what people genuinely believed was lurking out there. The ocean was this enormous, frightening mystery.
So you really have to ask, right? What on earth could possibly motivate someone to take that kind of risk? It wasn't just one simple thing. It was more like a perfect storm, a brand new way of thinking mixed with some incredibly powerful and very human motivations.
Okay, so first things first, we have to talk about the Renaissance. It completely changed the game, especially in how people saw themselves. A totally new mindset was spreading across Europe, one that was all about human potential and what we're capable of achieving.
This quote right here just nails it. For the first time in a long time, people had this incredible faith that individuals could do amazing things. That confidence was basically the psychological rocket fuel for these voyages. The whole thinking shifted from, we can't possibly do that, to, hey, what if we could?
So, armed with all this new confidence, what were the actual goals? Well, historians have boiled it down to a super simple and easy to remember phrase: God, gold, and glory. These three things, the three G's, were the powerful forces that pushed explorers out into the great unknown. Let's break them down one by one.
Let's kick things off with gold. And when we say gold, we're not just talking about shiny metal. We mean money, wealth, trade, the entire economic engine of Europe. And trust me, this was a massive driver.
Now, what you're looking at here is a map of a single event that changed everything. In 1453, the city of Constantinople, which was like the main highway for trade with Asia, fell to the Ottoman Turks. This basically slammed the door on the old trade routes. All of a sudden, getting your hands on luxury goods like spices became ridiculously expensive. This created a huge economic incentive to find another way to Asia, a sea route. And on top of that, Europe was literally running out of cash. Their own gold and silver mines were drying up, but their economies were growing and needed more precious metals to even function. You can think of it kind of like our world's dependence on oil today. For them, gold and silver were the fuel. Without a new supply, their entire economy was at risk of grinding to a halt.
Okay, next up, glory. This one is all about fame, personal achievement, and of course, national pride. It's that deep down desire to make a name for yourself and put your country on the map, literally.
And this table here just lays out the shift in thinking so perfectly. In the Middle Ages, life was mostly about your community and preparing for the afterlife. But the Renaissance, it celebrated the individual. Suddenly, an explorer like Christopher Columbus could become a global hero, achieve a level of fame and fortune that would have been totally unimaginable just 100 years before. This was a chance to write your own legend.
And that brings us to the third G, God. You can't underestimate this one. Religion was an incredibly powerful force in the Renaissance world, and for many, exploration wasn't just an opportunity, it was a sacred duty.
The explorers and the kings and queens who funded them truly believed they had a responsibility to spread the Christian faith to new parts of the world. It was also tied up in politics. They were hoping to find new Christian allies in their ongoing conflicts with Muslim nations. This even led to these epic quests from mythical figures like Prester John, a legendary Christian king they hoped was ruling a kingdom somewhere out there in Africa or Asia.
So they definitely had the motivation. God, gold, and glory. That's a powerful cocktail. But, wanting to do something is one thing. Actually having the tools to pull it off, that's a whole other story. And that brings us to the amazing new technology that made it all possible.
So, you can't exactly sail across a massive ocean if you have no idea where you're going or how to get back. That's where navigation comes in. And during this period, sailors got a serious toolkit upgrade. New instruments and a better understanding of things like wind and currents were the keys that finally unlocked long-distance travel across the open ocean. Just look at the difference here. On the left, you've got a map from 1482 based on ancient knowledge. See how Africa just kind of stops? Now look at the one on the right, from just a few decades earlier. It shows so much more of the African coastline. This kind of rapidly improving knowledge gave sailors the confidence they needed to push further, and they were doing it in way better ships too. New designs like the Caravel were faster, more maneuverable, and could even sail against the wind, a total game changer.
Okay, so you've got the motive, you've got the means. The stage is now set for one of the most dramatic and consequential moments in all of human history. The moment when two worlds, Europe and the Americas, which had developed in total isolation for thousands of years, finally and suddenly collided.
Let's try to imagine this. It's 1492. You're a young Taino girl on a Caribbean beach, and one day you look out at the water and see three things that look like floating mountains with huge white clouds on them. Then strange-looking men with pale skin and hair on their faces get off, wearing weird clothes and speaking a language you've never heard. Can you even begin to imagine the shock? That single moment would set off a chain reaction that would completely reshape the entire planet.
And it wasn't a one-and-done trip. Columbus was absolutely convinced he'd found a shortcut to Asia, and he kept going back. This timeline just gives you a sense of the sheer scale and determination of this effort to explore, to claim, and ultimately to control these lands that they started calling the New World. Which brings us all the way back to today. The age of sailing off the edge of a map is pretty much over, but we still look to new frontiers, don't we? So what do you think motivates us now to explore places like deep space or the very bottom of our oceans? Is it still about God, gold, and glory, just maybe in a different disguise? It's definitely something to think about.
I want to start today with a little visualization exercise. I know you might be on the bus or in your room, maybe even sneaking a listen during study hall, but just humor me for a second. Close your eyes if you can.
Okay, I'm ready.
Imagine you are on a boat, and I don't mean a cruise ship with, a buffet and a pool. This is a wooden tub, basically. It's damp, it smells like unwashed bodies and rotting food, and it's just bobbing around in the middle of this massive pitch black ocean.
Not exactly a luxury vacation.
Not even close. You've been sailing for 96 days. That's over 3 months. And you have absolutely no idea when or even if you're going to see land again. You are terrified of sea monsters.
And I mean genuinely terrified.
Genuinely 100% believe there are giant serpents just swimming right under you waiting.
And if you look at the maps from back then, that was a totally rational fear to have.
Totally. And to top it all off, you're pretty sure the guys next to you are whispering about mutiny. They want to throw the captain overboard because they think he's lost his mind.
That is a very vivid and honestly terrifying picture. It sounds like the start of a horror movie.
It does, but that wasn't a movie. That was the Tuesday afternoon reality for sailors during the Renaissance. And today we're doing something a little special. We're doing a deep dive specifically to help all the grade 8 history students out there absolutely crush their unit on the age of exploration.
Yeah, we've got your back. And honestly, this is the best way to learn it. We're going to move beyond just, memorizing dates and names. We want to get into the worldview of the time. What on earth possessed these people to leave home and sail into that nightmare you just described?
Right. We're unpacking the why, the motivations, the how, the means, and the so what, the consequences. So if you're in class or cramming for a test, stick around. Let's get into it.
Let's start with the why. Because looking at all the risks, scurvy, storms, starvation leaving Europe in the 1400s, seems like a genuinely terrible idea.
It really does. So what changed? I mean, people had boats before this. Why did they suddenly decide to go further?
Well, you have to look at the headspace they were in. This isn't the Middle Ages anymore. This is the Renaissance. And there's this new bubbling enthusiasm called humanism.
Okay, humanism. That's
Yeah.
a key term for the students listening. Let's unpack that. It's the shift from focusing only on the afterlife to caring about this life.
That's the core of it, yeah. In the Middle Ages, the worldview was very much about enduring life to get to heaven. But in the Renaissance, there's a new faith in what human beings can do. That people could achieve great things right here.
And they're reading things, right, like from travelers, Marco Polo, and people like that.
Exactly. People were reading accounts from travelers like Marco Polo. And, some of his writing was, let's say, creative.
A little bit of misinformation there.
A lot of it was exaggerations about, incredible wealth and strange beasts. But even the lies sparked this intense curiosity. People just wanted to see the world for themselves.
But let's be real, curiosity is great, but it doesn't pay for 3 ships and 100 sailors. You need investors.
You need cold, hard cash. And that brings us to the biggest driver of them all. If you remember nothing else for your test, remember this: the spice trade.
Okay, spices. I feel like this is where modern listeners kind of disconnect. We hear, they wanted spices, and we think, really? You risk death for some nutmeg?
It sounds totally absurd to us because we can just walk into a store and buy cinnamon for a few dollars. But in the Renaissance, spices were like The iPhone, the luxury car, and the refrigerator all rolled into one. They were a huge status symbol, and they were essential for preserving food.
Okay, so they were valuable. But the problem wasn't just wanting them, it was how hard they were to actually get. The supply chain was a mess.
A total mess for Europe. So spices grew in the Far East, India, China, the Spice Islands. Arab merchants would buy them there. They'd transport them to Constantinople. Then they'd sell them to Italian merchants, mostly from Venice.
And then the Venetians sell them to everyone else.
Right. To the rest of Europe, that is a lot of middlemen.
Right.
And every single one takes a cut.
A huge cut, I'm guessing.
Massive. By the time a sack of pepper got to a table in London, the price had gone up 100, 1,000, sometimes even 2,000 times the original cost.
2,000 times.
Yeah.
That's not a markup, that's robbery.
It was. And then it got even worse. Here's a key date for the history class. 1453.
Fall of Constantinople.
Exactly. The city of Constantinople, which was the gateway for this trade, gets conquered by the Muslim Turks. And this effectively blocked the main route, or at least made it incredibly expensive and dangerous.
So if you're a rich investor in, say, Portugal, you've got a dilemma. Do you keep paying these insane prices to the Italians and the Turks, or do you take a massive gamble?
You take the gamble, you try to cut out all those middlemen and find your own way to the source. That was the economic engine. But there was another problem too, gold.
Right, the sources mention a bullion shortage.
Basically, European mines were running out of gold and silver. Their economies were trying to grow, but there physically wasn't enough metal to mint coins.
So the economy was literally stalling because they ran out of cash.
In a very real sense, yes. They were desperate for new sources of gold. So you have the pull of spices and the push of the gold shortage.
But we can't talk about this era without the third pillar. We've got gold and glory. We need to talk about God.
Religion was the lens through which they saw everything. The explorers, the monarchs who funded them, they truly believed they had a divine mandate to spread Christianity.
And there's this one story in our notes that I love. It sounds like an Indiana Jones plot. The Legend of Prester John.
Oh, Prester John is fascinating. It's a great example of how misinformation shaped actual history. For hundreds of years, this legend circulated in Europe about a super wealthy, powerful Christian king named Prester John.
And they thought he was just out there somewhere, in Africa or Asia.
Yep, they thought he ruled this magical kingdom surrounded by infidels. Prince Henry of Portugal, who's a key figure we'll get to, was obsessed with finding him. He hoped they could join forces and launch a two-front crusade against the Muslims.
So a military strategy completely based on a fairy tale.
Totally based on a myth. They never found him, because he didn't exist. But that belief launched real ships across real oceans.
Okay, so that's the why. Motivation is high. You want the money, the glory, the souls. But you need the means. You need the tech.
And this is where the popular image of European innovation gets a bit of a reality check. We often think of this as European tech conquering the world, but almost all the key tools were borrowed or adapted from other cultures.
It's a global group project. Let's look at the toolkit. First up, the compass.
Developed in China probably around 1700 years ago, it got to Europe through Muslim travelers. It solved the basic problem. Which way is north?
Essential. But knowing north doesn't tell you where you are. That's where the astrolabe comes in.
Right. This is a bit more complex. The astrolabe uses the stars to calculate your latitude, how far north or south of the equator you are, and that tech came from the ancient Greeks and was then refined by Arab mathematicians.
There's a great little anecdote in our source material about this. Samuel de Champlain, the French explorer, apparently he lost his astrolabe in 1613.
He did, just dropped it while traveling up the Ottawa River, and it stayed lost for over 200 years. Then in 1867, a 14-year-old farm boy, Edward Lee, just finds it in the dirt.
That's amazing. It's a great reminder these were real, physical tools that people relied on and sometimes dropped in the mud.
Exactly.
So they know where they're going, but they need a ride. And before this era, European ships were, well, clunky.
Clunky is generous. They were using the medieval cog. Picture a bathtub with a square sail. Great for short trips if the wind is behind you, but if the wind was blowing against you, dead in the water, can't move. That doesn't work for crossing an ocean. So the Portuguese developed the caravel. This was the game changer.
What made the caravel so different?
The sail. They adapted the triangular lateen sail from Arab dhows.
And the triangle shape matters because of physics.
Yeah. A square sail just catches wind like a bag. A triangular sail acts more like an airplane wing. It creates lift. It lets you sail into the wind by zigzagging. Suddenly, the ocean wasn't a one-way street.
But even with this high-tech ship, we need to keep the scale in mind. The source says when they built replicas of Columbus's ships, people were shocked.
Shocked at how tiny they were. The text compares the length of one of his ships to 5 vans parked end to end.
That's it, 5 vans.
That's it. Now imagine crossing the Atlantic in that. 90 days in a space the size of 5 vans with 30 other unwashed guys.
No, thank you, I'll pass.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so we have the motivation, gold, God, glory, and the means compass, astrolabe, caravel. Now, the race is on. And it really was a race between Portugal and Spain.
Portugal took the lead. Their strategy was basically go east by going south. They wanted to sail all the way around Africa to get to India.
This is where Prince Henry the Navigator comes in. But he didn't actually navigate, did he?
No, that's a nickname. He was a patron, like a tech billionaire today. He set up the center at Sagres in Portugal and just brought together all the smartest cartographers, astronomers, sailors. He basically created a Silicon Valley for sailing.
And it paid off.
Eventually. It took decades. Bartholomew Dias made it around the bottom of Africa, but then his crew mutinied and made him turn back. But then Vasco da Gama pushed through. He made it all the way to India.
And when he came back with those spices, the whole game changed.
It shifted the balance of power overnight, but it also led to immediate conflict. The Arab merchants weren't just going to hand over their trade route. This led to the Battle of Diu,
which was a massive sea battle.
Decisive. The Portuguese fleet was smaller, but they had cannons on their ships, and they just decimated the Arab fleet. That battle established European control over the Indian Ocean.
So Portugal wins the East. Spain is sitting there with serious FOMO, fear of missing out. They need a win. Enter Christopher Columbus.
Columbus had a different idea, a much riskier idea. He thought, why go around Africa? The world is round. I'll just sail west and hit China from the back.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. We're taught that Columbus was this visionary genius, but our deep dive shows he actually made a huge mistake.
He was incredibly bad at math. Or maybe he just cherry-picked his data. He relied on the ancient scholar Ptolemy, who underestimated the size of the Earth, and Marco Polo, who overestimated the size of Asia.
So he thought the Earth was small and Asia was huge.
Exactly. When Columbus did the math, he figured Japan was only about 4,000 kilometers west of Europe.
How far is it actually?
About 20,000 kilometers.
He was off by 16,000 kilometers. That is not a rounding error.
No. If the Americas hadn't been sitting right there to catch him, he and his crew would have just died of thirst in the middle of the ocean. It was a complete blunder that turned into a discovery.
So in 1492, he bumps into the Caribbean. And this brings us to one of the most important parts of the source material, the first contact. We have a description here from the perspective of the Taino people.
This is such a crucial perspective for any history student. We always hear about Columbus seeing the island. But the source describes 2 Taino girls seeing large, strange boats with huge sails. And then they see the men. They describe them as having white skin and furry faces.
Furry faces? That's the beards.
Right. The Taino generally didn't have facial hair. So to them, these Europeans looked like strange, hairy creatures. But the initial reaction was curiosity. The Europeans smiled. It seemed friendly.
But we know it didn't stay friendly. And this leads us to the consequences and this concept of expansionism.
Expansionism is exactly what it sounds like. It's the policy of a country trying to increase its power and territory. And you can see this worldview written down legally before Columbus even left port.
You're talking about the contract he signed, the Articles of Agreement?
Yes, just listen to the language. The king and queen appoint Columbus as admiral and viceroy of all lands which are discovered or acquired, and he gets to keep 10% of all merchandise. Pearls, gems, spices.
It's purely transactional. They're dividing up a world they haven't even seen yet. It's a worldview of absolute ownership.
And that ownership extended to people. We have to talk about the dark side of this, slavery.
The source makes a nuance here, though. It says slavery wasn't invented by Europeans.
Correct. Slavery existed in Africa before Europeans arrived, usually involving prisoners of war. But what the Portuguese and then other Europeans did was they industrialized it. Before they even got to the Americas, Portugal was trading for slaves in Africa to work sugar plantations on islands in the Atlantic.
So the model for plantation slavery was built before they even reached the New World.
Yes. And when they applied that model to the Americas, the impact was catastrophic. The source estimates the population of the Americas was somewhere between 40 and 90 million people. The Population of Europe at the time was only 60 million.
Wait, so there were potentially more people living in the Americas than in all of Europe?
Potentially, yes. And this brings us to the terminology. You'll often hear this called the Age of Discovery, but the source really challenges that word.
Right, there's a quote from a modern Onondaga chief, the Hecadons. He says, "You cannot discover an inhabited land. Otherwise, I could cross the Atlantic and discover England."
It's such a brilliant point. To the millions of people living there, it wasn't a new world. It was just the world. That's why a lot of historians now call this period the Age of Invasion. It acknowledges the perspective of the people who were already there.
It really changes how you see the map. It wasn't empty space. It was a home that was invaded. Speaking of the map, we do have to mention one last explorer, Magellan.
Ferdinand Magellan sailed for Spain, went all the way around South America into the Pacific. He actually died in the Philippines, got involved in a local war, but one of his ships made it all the way back. It was the first circumnavigation of the globe.
Which proved, once and for all, that the Earth was round and the oceans were all connected.
It was the ultimate proof of that Renaissance humanist belief, that humans could overcome anything. Magellan's voyage basically proved they could circle the entire planet.
Okay, so let's wrap this up for our grade 8 listeners.
Yeah.
If you're sitting in a test and you need to summarize this whole era, let's bullet point the big takeaways.
All right, here's your cheat sheet. Think gold, God, and glory. Those were the motivations.
The economic drive to bypass middlemen for spices and find new precious metals.
The religious desire to spread Christianity and find mythical allies like Prester John.
The humanistic desire to explore and the national desire to expand.
And don't forget the means. They did it with borrowed tech. The compass from China, the astrolabe from the Greeks and Arabs, and that new caravel ship design.
And finally, remember the perspective. For Europe, it was an age of wealth and expansion. For the indigenous peoples of the Americas and the people of Africa, it was the start of an age of invasion and exploitation.
Before we sign off, I just want to leave you with a modern connection, because this stuff is still relevant.
Oh, absolutely. We look back at these guys in wooden tubs and think they were crazy. But look at space exploration today. Look at the missions to Mars.
It's the same drivers, it's incredibly expensive, it's dangerous, people die, and it's driven by national pride. The space race was just like the race between Spain and Portugal.
And it raises the same questions about resources. They fought over spice routes and gold mines. Today, nations are eyeing resources in the deep ocean or even on asteroids.
So here's the question we want to leave you with. If we start mining the moon or the bottom of the ocean, who owns that? Is it first come, first served, just like it was for Columbus in 1492? Or have we developed a new worldview since then?
That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving in with us, and good luck on that history unit.
You're going to do great.
See you next time.